The warmth of the contact lingered long after she walked away. Chapter 2. Tides of Betrayal. Wealth had a particular scent, Charlie decided. It smelled like expensive leather, aged scotch, and the metallic tang of hidden secrets. Jacob Kaufman was a man who enjoyed his wealth with a cruel enthusiasm. He was a Leodite with $1 billion crypto fortune, cruising the Atlantic on his yacht, Best Kind, while humiliating everyone in his orbit, his wife Andrea, his tech partner Veronica, and the crew. When Kaufman was found pinned to the deck by a spear gun, the list of people who wanted him dead was longer than the yacht's manifest. Spear gun, Sarah mused, examining the wound back at the lab. The angle suggests the shooter was between 5'4" and 5'10". And Charlie, there's seawater in the wound. This wasn't just a shot from the hip. This was planned. The case was a labyrinth. A missing watch. A reproduction of a 1966 diver's watch held the key. Literally. The 6-4-digit hexadecimal crypto key was engraved inside the casing. Charlie spent hours on the docks, Rex by his side. The dog's ears perked up at the sound of the waves, but it was the scent of mahogany and deer skin, the lining of the watch case, that Rex locked onto. As they dug deeper, the romance of the high seas turned into a tale of cold-blooded greed. Veronica Goodwin, the tech expert, had been the architect. She had manipulated James Endicott, a software engineer whose AI was nothing more than a front for a sweatshop in India. The climax unfolded on the yacht under a moonlit sky. Veronica had killed Kaufman, then killed Endicott to silence him. She was ready to disappear with the crypto millions when Charlie and Rex closed in. "It's over, Veronica," Charlie shouted over the wind. She held a gun, her eyes cold. "I've already killed for this." "You think a dog is going to stop me?" Rex didn't need a command. He was a blur of black and tan, a force of nature that disarmed her before she could pull the trigger. Later that night, leaning against the railing of the pier, Sarah joined Charlie. "Another one for the books," she said softly. "I'm just glad to be on solid ground," Charlie replied. He looked at her, the moonlight catching the highlights in her hair. "Sometimes, the people with the most money are the poorest in spirit." "And what about us, Charlie?" Sarah asked, a playful but loaded question. "What are we rich in?" Charlie smiled, a rare, genuine expression. "Trouble, mostly. But the good kind." Chapter 3. The Bitter Spirit. The Devereux Distillery was a pillar of Street John's heritage, known for its traditional pine-forward gin. But the family behind the spirit was crumbling. Willem Devereux, the patriarch, was found head first in a vat of his own new secret blend. "Drowned in gin," Jesse noted, looking at the crime scene. "Not a bad way to go, if you have to." "He didn't drown," Sarah corrected, her voice echoing in the vast distillation room. "He was struck from behind with a bottle, then dragged. He was alive when he hit the liquid." This was an execution. The secret ingredient in the new gin was the key: Labrador tea, a local botanical that was both aromatic and, in high concentrations, toxic. The suspects were a trio of siblings: Alan, the CFO, Melanie, the rebel, and Jaden, the ambitious eldest. Each had a motive. Jaden wanted to sell to a Japanese conglomerate. Alan was cracking under the pressure of his father's tyranny. And Melanie felt her father had stolen her ideas. Rex's nose proved invaluable. He identified the scent of the Labrador tea in Melanie's hand cream. But he also found something more sinister: a bottle of gin poisoned with tetrazoline, an eye-drop ingredient intended for a rival critic, Simone Sawyer. The investigation was a slow-burn drama of family resentment. Charlie watched the siblings tear each other apart in the interview room, realizing that the distillery wasn't just a business, it was a cage. In a climactic confrontation, it was revealed that Melanie had found her father unconscious after Alan had struck him. Instead of calling for help, she had dragged him to the vat to finish the job, framing Jaden in the process. "He tore me down my whole life," Melanie whispered as the handcuffs clicked. "I thought he was going to humiliate me again." As the case closed, Charlie found Sarah in the distillery's tasting room, staring at the copper stills. "The things people do for legacy," she sighed. Charlie poured 2 glasses of water noggin tonight. My father used to say, a man's legacy isn't what he builds, it's who he leaves behind. The Devereaux left nothing but vinegar. We're doing okay though, Sarah said, clinking her glass against his. At least our secrets are just work-related. Charlie's eyes lingered on hers. Are they, Sarah, just work? The moment hung in the air, thick with the scent of juniper and unspoken possibilities. Before Jessie burst in with news of a new lead, the dance continued. Chapter 4. The Shakedown. The final week of the month brought the most dangerous challenge yet. A shakedown gone wrong on the docks. Tyler Craner, the son of a notorious mobster, had shot a man named Malcolm Carter in cold blood. The only witness was Wyatt Donner, a hiker who had seen the execution through the trees and fled into the wilderness of Cape Royal. We have a professional hit woman on the trail, Donovan warned Charlie. Serena Riquet. She's out of Halifax, and she doesn't miss. Charlie, Jessie, and Rex headed into the dense woods. The terrain was unforgiving granite cliffs, thick brush, and spotty cell service. As they tracked Wyatt, they encountered a woman who claimed to be a lost hiker named Kelly. But Charlie's instincts, honed by years of danger, screamed. Rex's low growl confirmed it. Jessie, get Wyatt out of here, Charlie commanded. A firefight erupted in the clearing. The silence of the woods was shattered by the crack of gunfire. Charlie felt a searing pain in his shoulder as a bullet grazed him. He went down, the world spinning. Charlie, Jessie screamed. Go, Charlie hissed, clutching his arm. Rex stayed by his side, a protective wall of muscle. The hit woman, Serena, approached with a cold, predatory grace. A detective and a dog, she sneered. A waste of talent, but she had underestimated the Newfoundland wilderness and Rex. Using a trick his grandfather had taught him, Charlie lured her into a false trail. When she lunged, Rex was ready. The dog tackled her with a force that sent her tumbling over a ridge, where Donovan's backup team was waiting. Back at the trailhead, the adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a dull, throbbing ache. Sarah was there before the ambulance had even come to a full stop. Charlie. She ran to him, her face pale. I'm okay, Sarah. Just a scratch, he lied, his breath hitching as she began to examine the wound. You're an idiot, Charlie Hudson, she whispered, her hands shaking slightly as she bandaged him. You could have been killed. I had Rex, he said, looking at the dog who was currently receiving a celebratory head rub from Jessie. Sarah looked up at him, her eyes brimming with a mixture of anger and relief. Before she could think better of it, she leaned forward and kissed his cheek, a lingering, soft contact that felt like a promise. Don't do that to me again, she said softly. Epilogue. The sun on the coast. A few days later, Charlie sat on the porch of his trailer, his arm in a sling. The sun was setting over the water, turning the Atlantic into a sheet of liquid gold. Rex was curled at his feet, dreaming of the hunt. A car pulled up, and Sarah stepped out, carrying a bag of takeout and a bottle of wine. She looked at him, the detective who had seen too much, and the man she was beginning to realize she couldn't live without. Donovan's potato salad? Charlie asked, smelling the familiar aroma. And my company, Sarah added, sitting beside him. They sat in silence for a long time, watching the light fade. The crimes were solved, the killers were behind bars, and for a brief moment, the world was at peace. You know, Sarah, Charlie said, his voice low. The fog in this town, it usually hides things. But lately, I feel like things are becoming very clear. Sarah smiled, leaning her head on his uninjured shoulder. Is that the detective talking? Or the man? Both, Charlie replied. Rex opened one eye, let out a contented sigh, and went back to sleep. The cold coast was quiet, but for Charlie Hudson and Sarah Trong, a new chapter was just beginning. 2. The End. Shadows of the North Atlantic. A Hudson and Sarah saga. Prologue. The fog of Street Johns. The fog in Street Johns was never just weather. It was a character, a silent, brooding entity that lived in the Narrows and breathed through the colorful row houses of Gower Street. He crept over the city like a witness to secrets. dampening the rhythmic tolling of the harbor bells and blurring the line where the